Hi all. There are quite a few major exponents of the modern defence, or Robash, which I believe we should at least give one or two example games from each. One of the exponents is Raymond Keene. Now Raymond Keene actually wrote a very interesting book, well, number of books, but one of them that I found particularly interesting was called Becoming a Grandmaster. And in it he alluded to Nimzovich, which I'm a great fan of, and to hypermodern openings like the modern defence as part of his exploration of hypermodern strategy. He used the modern defence quite extensively throughout his career, so is one of the major exponents statistically according to ChessGames.com, and he even used it in major events like the Lloyds Bank Masters. He won one of the Lloyds Bank Masters in 1981, which I think we should have a look at one or two of those games, because he did actually play the modern with black. Now here, this is earlier, 1971 in Hammersmith. He was playing the up-and-coming John Nunn. So John Nunn went on to become one of the strongest ever UK players. John Nunn was only a teenager, about 15. Raymond Keene was about 23 at the time of this game. So this is 1971 Hammersmith. We have E4 from John Nunn, who later, as many of you know, John Nunn became one of the greatest also opening theoreticians. So we have G6, so a very, very hyper-modern move, which we call quite often now the modern defence. D4, bishop G7, knight C3, D6, and we have the move F4, so Austrian attack style, knight C6. Now knight F3 was played. Perhaps better is to play bishop E3, which is actually the engine's suggestion. Stockfish 11 recommends bishop E3 here. At this time, knight F3 was in vogue, allowing this pin. So I guess there's some controversy about allowing the pin or not, because surely black doesn't want to give up the light square bishop. I mean, this is one of the modern themes I've picked up from neural networks, that quite often when you give up the bishop of a certain colour, it's the other colour, and in particular this D4 square, which could become under intense scrutiny later. So slightly controversial, but overall this is a very, very interesting idea. So voluntarily give up the bishop, in fact, after bishop E3, without even prompting for H3, Raymond Keene took on F3. So he has a real belief in this pressure on the dark squares. So G takes F3 was played here. There is an interesting gambit. You could consider a gambit after knight takes D4. If taking with the queen, losing a pawn like this, it's kind of interesting, probably quite dangerous. But technically, black should be having a small edge there. So in this game, we have the double pawns though. E6, queen D2, D5, and it echoes Nimzovichian principles here. If white dares play E5, then there's a beautiful blockade square, knight H6. A knight blockade in front of double pawns is a Nimzovichian dream ideal. And in fact here, yes, it is quite practical as well. Black would be at least equal in this position if that happens, if white had to give up that light square bishop just to get rid of that horrible knight. So anyway, we have F5, very energetic play from John Nunn. So he was to become one of the most aggressive, scary players to play, especially if you're going to play Sicilian defence. You're bound to be hacked, basically. Statistically, you would be hacked to death. So very, very aggressive, violent play in the opening. He himself, John Nunn, often describes himself as a coffee house player. So F5 here. We have E takes F5, E takes F5. And now this interesting technicality, this interesting check, this interruption check, instead of... So it's a kind of nuisance check to do with E3, and the interesting thing about this game, that E3 square is going to feature later, so watch out for it in a later, almost to the end position of the game. Watch out for this kind of swinging check where the queen calls a weakness and goes back to probe that square. So here we see this check, a nuisance check, bishop F2, and it goes back and it's eyeing E3. We have bishop E2 here. On queen E3, there's bishop takes D4. So yeah, this is a nuisance. this position, or bishop e3, bishop takes d4. So we have bishop e2, and what black's gained from this is the bishop is less than ideal here, because this bishop on g7 can now try and use this diagonal. We have immediately using the diagonal, so it's causing some damage already. Now f4, putting a pawn on the dark square here, is not really making this bishop feel at home in the position, this bishop on f2. If queen d3 instead, then knight f6, and say f4, just to liberate a little bit the pieces, black's going to have a nice advantage. So f4 here. So strategically, after castling queenside now, this early f5, it's left white with quite significant weaknesses. And if white, takes on g6, it's activating the rook. This is not very pleasant for white. So white castles queenside. We have queen d6, putting pressure on f4. The bishop goes very, very passive to defend that. Now g takes f5, putting a lock and key on the f4 pawn. So this is an absolutely dream position to have with the black pieces, especially against the likes of John Nunn. To get in a position like this with the black pieces is unheard of, basically, against John Nunn. Later, he was to become one of the greatest opening theoreticians in the UK, at least. So knight g e7, bishop f3, bishop g7, putting pressure on d4, queen f2, rook d e8. We have queen g2. This is a bit impatient, queen g2. If white does nothing, though, yeah, the pressure on d4 is really annoying, and on f4, white's really just passive here. If white keeps being passive, let's say rook e1, how does black evolve the position? One thing black could do is try for a knight coming to c4. I mean, let's imagine a3 isn't played, there's other possibilities. But if a3 is played, like there's possibilities like queen b4 potentially, but if it is played, then it weakens the c4 square. So here, that's just... this position should be absolutely nice for black, but let's look at this again. Say h4, and then the knight could go in potentially to c4, and then queen b6, and it's really quite dangerous. Black ends up winning some material there with a big advantage. So there's all sorts of nasties lurking. Black can evolve this position. Sorry, this is the position. Queen g2, knight takes, taking on d4, so white takes on d5. It weakens the e2 square potentially. By taking on d5, the e2 square is further weakened, and black gets in this very dangerous check now, knight e2 check. Of course, if white had another move, then bishop takes b7 and rook takes d6, but it's black to play here and can get out of this tactic and even create his own threat now with queen b4. And actually, John Nunn resigned here. It's tactically very bad, this position, because if bishop b3, because otherwise queen takes b2 is mate, and if c3, knight takes c3 check and then win the rook. So bishop b3, can you see what black would play here? Which creates an amusing continuation, echoing that earlier kind of tactic, that tactical check actually. Black to play here, if I give you 5 seconds to pause the video. Okay, not only is this bishop better than its counterpart, it's also emphasized even more with this tactic, knight c3 check. Unless white wants to lose the exchange, it would take. Now threatened with mate, there's only really one move, to move the king to evacuate. After check, king d2, there's an amusing move here which helps secure a mating net or possibilities of mating. What would you play here if I give you 5 seconds to pause the video? Black to play. Okay, an amusing move to play is rook e7. So that keeps the king out of the e file. I'm going to use the other rook, using a lot more force to try and bring on this mating net. And if bishop h4, check, and say bishop d5, there's an amusing seesaw kind of check ending in mate here. I wonder if you can spot it. Black to play a mate. Can you spot the forced checkmate? There's some mystery to me about why this pattern even exists with the checks, the recurring checks. They tamper with the position here. Queen c3 check, And we can see a common square is built on E3 for a moment, but we really want to use that common square in the worst possible way for white's configuration, and that is achieved by another key check here. So which one is it? Which is the real killer check now? So you really want to make use of the common square under the most favourable circumstances from your point of view and the most unfavourable from white. So what is the amazing check in this position which does the trick? Okay, Queen A3 check. And if King B1, Queen B2, and if the King now goes to D2, yes, Queen E3 is checkmate. So to me, this game, although played in 1971, it echoes a really kind of modern phenomena which I've seen in neural network play, this willingness to give up a bishop to put pressure on the other colour of the bishop. So that was shown here, that this dark square bishop in particular was much better than its counterpart, put intense pressure on the dark squares, which culminated in a dark square winning tactical combination. So I think this game was more modern than the year it is played in, 1971. So ahead of its time in a way, from a few angles, I would say. So a very provocative, interesting defense, the modern defense. And I did research with BritBase. John Saunders has the Lloyds Bank Masters 1981. If you look up Raymond Keene, he won the Lloyds Bank Masters 1981, and there's 4 key games in there with the modern defense. And I think we should look at 1 or 2 of those for interest. So I hope you enjoy this exploration for this interesting defense, the modern defense. And if you want to check out the modern defense course, which is now at Chessable, Kingscrusher TV /modern defense, and there's a free short and sweet version of that, Kingscrusher TV /modern. Okay, thanks very much.